one thing we've got to remember is that teams are highly important. Partnerships get us to the next level, and that's why we're here today. This type of networking event should lead to teams and partnerships. And so we're going to talk about what teams and partnerships look like in the context of leading with purpose. So I want to start out talking about aligning your business goals to final outcomes. So when we're talking about becoming our best selves, we need to have an end goal. We need to understand who it is that we want to be so that we can create a path to get there. So I want to ask each of you, what steps do you take to ensure that your daily activities are aligned with your long-term business goals, right? And then how do you pivot if that goes off kilter? So let's talk about the wholeness of a business owner, of an entrepreneur. Dr. Deonne, do you want to start with letting us know how you ensure that your daily activities remain aligned with long-term business goals?
There's two things that come to mind. How's that with the feedback? I'm good. He's like, make sure you keep it close to your mouth. So one is your morning routine. What do you do to set yourself, like I loved Colin was like cold plunge, right? So whatever it is that speaks to you, whether it's meditation, which that's my own personal, like I always start my day with meditation, that helps ensure that I'm getting the right action, that I know what to do. What's the best return on investment? And the other piece to me is self-care. And my own personal thing with self-care that I want to share is I just got back from a 16-day trip. That sounds very indulgent, but
oh my goodness.
But disconnecting from my day-to-day laundry, being a single mother, I've got 2 high schoolers at home, and I stretched. I landed in Dubai, and I was there for 36 hours, and nobody knew people here knew I was going to be there, but there was nobody with a sign. And when you just get off a plane and you have to figure it all out, that was transformative. As well as I was in Nepal for about 9 days leading a humanitarian expedition. So that part was like people knew I was coming and leading that. And then I had 4 days in Paris. And I told Nikki, like, I fell in love with myself again. And I came home and like within a week, I've written a children's book and I already have an illustrator off Fiverr. Like
y'all, it's good too. It's really good.
So follow me on Instagram or whatever social media. I'm going to start posting about it. But I think that disconnection and self-care, we often don't give ourselves that time and space to reset, to reground, to get inspired. It's critical. Colin, I love that you're like, yep, everything she's saying. Yeah.
Ted, talk to us about daily activities and how we align that with our future goals.
Yeah, well, you said something that I really believe in, and that is the start to the day. So I actually have 10 leadership principles that I talk to folks about. And the first one of those principles to be a good leader is to exercise before you work. And, each of us has our morning routine, but, kind of building on what you said, I would say 6 out of 7 days a week, I have had serious exercise by 8 o'clock in the morning. And as we all know, it gets your body loose for the day, but it also gets the pistons firing up here, right? And, sometimes I do it with music, and other times when I'm out going for a run on a trail or in the park or, wherever I'm just trying to find myself in the morning, sometimes I just listen to the surroundings, right? So, whether you need that music to inspire you or whatever, I think exercise before you work is super important. The second thing, anybody that knows me knows that when somebody says, "How are you doing?" I always say, "Well, I'm having an Army strong day, and I'm trying to be all I can be." Okay? Now, I don't think there's a lot of people in here that were part of the Ronald Reagan Cold War era of the 1980s, but I was a Cold War soldier in Germany, and I think the two mottos that we had back then, Army strong and be all you can be, are great ways to think about your life as an entrepreneur today. So
beautifully done, Nate.
Okay, first off, there's extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. If you guys understand about, how what you do is fueling the habits that you form in your life, it's really important that you step out of the circle that you're creating within your life, which is the habits that you are creating. So let's grab that just for a second. Now let's move into the purpose, which is the fuel of why you do what you do. We have to construct the fuel that pushes us forward, which is mission, values, culture, legacy, lifestyle, long-term thinking. So as soon as now we've constructed purpose, fuel, mission, value, cultures, surrounding ourselves with the individuals that we feel and we know are going to take us to that next level, that's what I believe. That's a daily action, and you guys are sitting in mission, values, culture right now. Daily actions that have led to each and every person sitting in this room. It's interesting. She said, well, I said to her, and I said, well, I don't want to be on stage. I don't want to talk. People don't need to hear me talk. They just need to come and experience, because what you do is you act that then creates the results. It's not just talk.
And what I told Nate was that he is the embodiment of an idea coming to reality, and it was important for him to be on this stage. Don't you think so? Thank you for being here, Nate, and for creating this space for all of us. Now, you might wonder why, when we're talking about purposeful leadership, I led with a question that talked about your daily routine. And the reason is because being an effective leader means making other effective leaders. That's how you know that you're a good leader. It's not kind of waving the flag and having a bunch of folks behind you following what you do, but it is having folks emulate who you are to become that great leader. And so it's important that we understand what leaders are doing in their personal lives, because that is then how we can start to develop ourselves. Now, in that same space, right, what I want to know, because we're talking about building partnerships and building teams, right? Now you have these routines, you understand your purpose, you know why you're up in the morning, the pistons are firing, all of the things are going. How then do you communicate to your team, right? How do you effectively communicate vision to your team? You're showing them that you have habits that are habits of highly effective people. Now, how do you communicate to them that these are the kinds of habits that are necessary in order for us as a team to get to the goal?
I'm going to touch on that just because you guys are, once again, you're in an environment that is fostering the test of leadership, whether it's bad leadership or good leadership. Everything from it all stems from the top, as you guys have known and you've heard and you've experienced yourself. So for me, for example, I have to go in the back and I have to make sure that the food is prepared on time for you guys. But I don't barge in and say, you guys suck. You're not out here as fast as possible. Let's go. What I do is you have to start with an appreciation first. Because once you then bridge that gap of understanding, because we've all had challenges that we're going through. It's just you have micro forms of appreciation. Now, and as soon as somebody knows that you believe in them, John C. Maxwell, he speaks about Leadership 101. It's a beautiful book if you guys ever need it. 101, John Maxwell. He talks about, doesn't matter the age of the individual that places belief into somebody, they just feel that belief and they know that they can accomplish more. It's a son that's 8 years old, just like what your son is. He's, I believe in you, Dad. Yeah. I believe in you, Mom. And as soon as you have that experience, you're like, you know what? Maybe that does give me a breath of fresh air to take the next step. Yeah. So for example, I believe in James. I believe that he can be a better chef. He's already a great chef. But we believe together that we can get him to another level. And you guys here are helping with that. So it's through belief that you then empower the greatest potential out of somebody.
Great answer. Dr. Deonne, how are you inspiring your teams?
One of the very first things I did when I started to manage a large team, I grew the team from 4 to 18, was we established team norms. And one of our very first things was to assume positive intent. And I love that they created that so they had buy-in to those team norms. And that was always our first go-to, that we're going to assume the best in people. And I love what you shared, Nate, about seeing the goodness in people, because I think as we intentionally look for that, it channels us into that headspace of work. It's almost, what's that called? Like conscious bias, self-conscious bias, where you look for something and you find it to be true. If we're looking for the good in people that report to us, we're going to see it, and they're going to see it in themselves.
Ted Mcaleer. Say it. Mcaleer. Everybody say Mcaleer. Okay, I'm not going to ruin it the next time. Ted, would love your ideas from the perspective that you are one of the founders of the Park City Angel Investment Group, right? And so your goals become a little different than just your own, because you're looking at other businesses and other companies and trying to get them there, right? So you have two different dynamics. You have the entire investment group who you've got to get on the same page, and then you all have to lead these young business owners. So what does that look like in terms of communicating the end result to folks?
Thank you for the question. For folks that haven't heard of the Park City Angel Investment Network, we're a 501c6 trade association, and our trade is making investments in entrepreneurs. And we have 102 dues-paying members. The majority are based in Park City or the Wasatch Back. To answer your question related to we think of ourselves somewhat as a two-sided marketplace. For us to be successful, entrepreneurs have to respect what we're bringing to the table and listen to us. And then the other side of it is, how do you get people that have all come from somewhere else and found Park City and the Wasatch Back to be their community? How do you get them to work together as business leaders to support entrepreneurs? And so, that's our challenge, and we do that in the same way I think that other folks do. We've got 5 principles that we focus on as a group in Park City Angels, and at the beginning of every monthly meeting, we put those 5 principles up there and just spend 2 minutes making sure that everyone understands how we're going to act when we're interacting with each other. And then, most importantly, when we're interacting with the entrepreneurs that are, seeking our mentoring, our coaching, and our capital. Respect
and alignment. Then we've got belief over here, right? Belief in the folks that we're leading. That was a great round. Did you get something out of that round, everybody? That was a great round. I think it's the way I'm going to segue is, we're building teams, and teams don't know necessarily, or our partners don't necessarily see the vision, right? When that happens, there needs to be vulnerability, right? You've got to be in a space where you can break yourself down to make folks understand what the vision is. And they need to be vulnerable with you as well to let you know, hey, I'm not too clear. This feels a little shaky, because then that's how open communication happens. Now, I believe, just talking with you all, that you have a space for vulnerability and the ability to engage with people in that space. So I want to know, because I think when I'm following somebody, when I'm following a leader, I want to know that that person is like me. I want to know that they sometimes fail, that they struggle with challenges, all of those things, because it makes them human. So can you share, in your experience, rather, how can sharing failures or challenges enhance the trust and bond with a team? Nate, I see you.
Yeah.
I see you moving.
I get all excited about this because I thought about it earlier, and Actually, I didn't even know you were going to ask this, but I thought about this answer while we were here on stage about this question. But it's about, so there's, actually, I forgot. Move on.
That's all right. So the question, though, I'm going to circle you back. The question, right, is in your experience, how can sharing failures or challenges enhance trust and bonds?
Okay, admitting that we're in process. I believe that it's important that we understand that we are in process, not perfect. Understand that we're in process. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
It's okay to be normal. It's okay to be yourself because we're in process. So I know I just said that 3 times, but I just want you guys to understand that because you are loved, you are accepted, because that's exactly what every single human on this planet wants. It doesn't matter how old you are, young you are, you still want to hear those words, and you still want to have the support.
How do you, Ted, because this is popping up for me, for you. You see a lot of companies that are trying to succeed. When you know that that company's not going to succeed, what does that communication look like? How do you have empathy in that moment to share with people that they may need to pivot, that perhaps they need more research, that perhaps there needs to be more R&D? How do you have those conversations in an empathetic way that doesn't break the bond that you have already built with them?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, the first thing to understand is in our business as angel investors, we invest in maybe 5% of the entrepreneurs that we meet with. So just to put that into numbers, I see, my colleagues and I see 50 business plans, 50 business plans per month, and we usually get into conversation with somewhere between 12 and 15 of those entrepreneurs based upon a quick reading of the business plan. And so we go from 50 business plans, let's say 12 conversations, and then a small group of us brings the top 6 opportunities to our group of peers, right? And so in that peer-centric, we call it a screening meeting, what we're trying to do is make sure that we're asking questions of the entrepreneur in a positive manner and recognizing that, you know, our framework may not be their framework. And so, you know, we've got to, and we do the best we can to say, these are the 12 things that we need to understand, and we've only got 10 minutes to start that conversation, right? So the process that we use, we try to make it way more friendly than what you've seen on Shark Tank,
Right.
Okay? But moving to the second piece is, if we've made an investment in that entrepreneur and, you know, something changes in their business, sometimes it's a macroeconomic condition that they have no, you know, influence over, right? You know, we just had an election this week. If you're selling to this side of the house and now this side of the house is taking charge, there may be a different, you know, macroeconomic way that you have to think about, you know, what you're selling, right? So we just try to make sure that we, you know, agree to disagree in a way that teaches the entrepreneur something that they haven't seen before, a new perspective. And we always leave the door open to say, hey, if you can work through this challenge in your pivot, as you said, come on back and see us again, because there's another opportunity to invest in your company later on.
So you send them out the door with a lesson instead of a loss. That's incredibly well done.
Well said.
Well done. Dr. Deonne, I wonder, because you are in the coaching space, and so we see people who are struggling, who are really unable to get past those walls or those barriers or whatever the issue is, right? When you are seeing someone that may not be failing, but perhaps is flailing, right? What does that look like from your side of the table, and how do you communicate them out of that situation? Like, how do you get them out of the flailing space into the prevailing space?
I love what Nate said, which essentially is progress over perfection. And that is, if we as leaders even put ourselves out there that it all has to look like this, it has to be perfection, then we're not creating that space for people to have our back. We have to make sure that they can give us that feedback. As far as when I'm coaching individuals, first is having a vision for themselves. How are they going to get where they're going if they don't know where they're going? It's like that Alice in Wonderland quote, right? Where the rabbit says, "Are you going to get there?" And she's like, "I don't even know where I'm headed." So first is creating that vision for themselves. And I love what you and I worked on maybe like a month or so ago. Also had a 3-hour coffee date with Nikki. That might just be a thing for Nikki. But we really talked about like vision boards and some actual strategies. So you can put pictures on your vision board. And we talked about creating an audio board for ourselves, or an audio vision. And so I saw people with ChatGPT earlier today. It's the best. I put into ChatGPT some of my vision board things and said, help me create the text for the life that I want to create for myself, and had some of my coaching clients do this as well. And then asked ChatGPT, like, generate some playlist or some songs, because I wanted like an epic, not quite Pirates of the Caribbean, but I wanted to record myself reading the script and listen to it every morning. And that is part of my morning routine. Like, it reminds me of my why and how I'm going to get, and it brings that into my awareness and space every day.
That's beautiful. I think we have to be vulnerable with ourselves, right? We have to look inside and say, this is who I want to be. Am I there yet? How do I get there? Well, now let's imagine that we've all built incredible teams, right? And they all understand what the end goal is. They're vulnerable. They're feeling the energy. They are following the leader and becoming leaders in their own right. One of the things that a lot of corporations look at is social responsibility. And so when they start talking about partners, the partnering becomes for the good of the world, right? For the good of the state, for the good of the children, for the good of whatever. And Dr. Deonne, you have lots of experience in doing well by doing good through Choice Humanitarian. I wonder, if we talk to entrepreneurs, how can we help them to incorporate social impact into their business model? And why? And why should they? What's the why for social impact in good business?
I think one of the main things, I'm thinking about this podcast by Simon Sinek that talked about the difference between millennials, Gen Z, Gen X. Our millennials care way more about our world than I think. I just turned 55, so I'm probably on that upper end of where we didn't necessarily even factor that into our business plan 20 or 30 years ago. If we want to keep our workforce focused on doing well by doing good, we really need to tap into what motivates people to be part of an organization or a corporation or a team. And I went on my first humanitarian expedition 13 years ago, and it shifted my own personal perspective and brought more clarity to my life that I've been leading a trip or two for the last 13 years. And corporations can do that through, you could have a corporate retreat that encourages that, or you could have employee match, or there's lots of ways that you can involve, but having people aligned to a purpose that's greater than themselves is really a way to increase employee engagement and retention.
Yeah.
And it makes a difference. It's the right thing to do.
Yeah. Ted, are you seeing in these new entrepreneurs that are coming to you and your angel investors, are you seeing that there is goodwill toward the world coming out of these projects? And if so, is that something that you are looking for in new young investment opportunities in these entrepreneurs? Does doing good, does that play a part in your decisions?
It definitely plays a part. I will say that, we have 100 people in our group, and that's 100 different perspectives on how they want to invest their capital. And so we have this conversation often, are we here as impact investors, or are we here as investors trying to get a return on our investment that's equivalent to what we could get if we put it in the S&P 500, for example, right? So frankly, that's an ongoing discussion, and we respect the fact that, you know, there's a lot of different opinions in the room. So what we try to do as we go from our 50 opportunities per month down to the 6 that we're really analyzing, we try to make sure that there's a blend of you know, straight up profitable business to business software or business to consumer software, and in this middle chunk maybe is a clean tech opportunity, and in this other chunk is maybe a health tech or a med tech opportunity. And you know, a clean environment's important, you know, a healthy environment's important, and we all know that a business-to-business software company can improve the efficiency of a company, right? So we bring 3 different types of opportunities to our members, and it allows, you know, the members to really vote on whether it's more impact or more profit-driven.
Right. And I think, I got you, Nate. I think that is so hopeful, because at least we know that things that cause impact are being considered seriously, not as sort of this secondary thought, but they are at the table at the beginning, on an even playing field, and have the opportunities. So thank you for sharing that. Nate?
Question is, what is being fed to you? And I'll explain. Marketing is very powerful, and it creates narratives that control the masses. So let's talk about how we can leverage marketing for good, or leverage it for the purpose of selfishness. So we have selflessness and selfishness. Culture today is driven by more, greed, selfish desires. Of course, we're investors, right? So we have to look at our ROI, but we can still make sure that we maintain the balance of understanding what cultural pressures we're fighting against, and the marketing and narratives that have been created that are moving our actions. So that's how I take a look at our social good. And it's not just doing good or doing well by doing good. You have to ask yourself, why? Why do I help people? And I can remember my grandmother, she passed away from lung cancer. It was an interesting time because she immediately found out, and she doesn't even smoke, but she was a farm worker. She was actually a mechanic, and overall an amazing woman. But I heard she had lung cancer, and then she passed away about a month and a half after that. But I can remember, there was one thing that I remembered and I took away from her death, was her servanthood. She left an impact. So if we can look, I know we're talking about ROIs, we're talking about money, we're talking about business, but life is bigger than business. Relationship is bigger than business, right? So that's why we have to take that macro viewpoint and understand, once again, why what we do what we do, what is controlling our actions, because once again, we removed ourselves from the cycle of habit. So then you can observe yourself and your actions of how and what is happening and how you're being created. So once again, it's kind of my touch.
You want to drop your mic? Don't you dare.
We might drop it to the next section.
Brandy Vega will have a fit if anybody drops the mic. No, I think we're closing in on the end here because we want to make sure that we have some time for some questions. But vulnerability, leading with empathy, understanding how to lead partners, how to gather partnerships and make them strong. What I want is for people to be able to walk away with something that's actionable. And we happen to be, as I said in the beginning, right now in a space where people have their walls down. I heard the Palooza games went really well. So great icebreakers. So we have the opportunity to get to know somebody who we didn't know when we came in here. and create relationships. And relationships require you to be vulnerable, to be empathetic, to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And let me tell you something else about relationships. The difference between a contact and a contract is an R, and that R is for relationship. So you need to make sure that you are taking all of this in, all of the information about empathy, all of the information about moving forward with teams, and really put that to work in your life. So I'm gonna ask you all for one piece of advice that is anchored in empathetic leadership that folks can take away. Nate, we'll start with you.
Seek to understand, bottom line, period. Anyone and everyone, once you have that empathetic understanding, I simply just want to get to know you, Emilio. I want to get to know you, Colin, for what your story is. What is your story? That's why we create this environment here that's a little bit longer than your typical transactional networking 2-hour event. We are fully immersed here. We care for each other. We understand each other, and we're getting a lot deeper. We ask who you are, not what you do. Because remember, we talked about, let me get another mic drop, hold up. Why do I have chairs during these things? Anyway, so it's if you want trust, be trustworthy. If you want trust, be trustworthy.
Indeed. Ted?
Okay, you're gonna make me go next. Well,
I'm gonna make you go next.
I was actually thinking before Nathan led with that we do need to be good listeners, and I think you brought up the point. The difference between contact and contract is just an R. It's about a relationship, and so I think when you engage with somebody for the first time. I happen to be a type A talker, and so for me personally, I have to really challenge myself to listen and make sure I really understand, why we're sitting down for coffee, or why we're going for a hike or a walk or whatever to engage with each other. It's being a better listener.
Being intentional about that listening. I like that. We know who we are, so we need to look out for our shortcomings and overcompensate for them. So that's a really great point. Be intentional about your listening. Dr. Deonne?
I'm thinking about that Japanese art form where a bowl breaks and they put it back together with gold, and it's so beautiful after it's become imperfect, and then they put it back together with gold. And actually on my last trip, I got this necklace that is it's a quartz, but it's got imperfections in it, these inclusions that make it beautiful. And so this is my little reminder of imperfections can bring beauty to my life, and that I should accept my own imperfections as well as those around me, and they should actually be celebrated. Like, I don't want everybody to look and think and act the same. That diversity is really an important part of creating a strong team and a company and an organization.
That was a way to close it out. Can we give a round of applause to the panel?